E-meter. Dianetics.
Case looks good, real good.
Body thetans.
10,000 body thetans.
Okay, folks, I think he's ready for OT3.
You're not a Scientologist.
No. But I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Course Room, to the Declare Dave Love Suppressive Sherry channel this beautiful Tuesday evening. Want to welcome you all for another night of craziness and total insanity out of the mouth of Hubbard himself as we continue in the series on operating Thetan levels for Never Ends. Speaking of Never Ends, let me bring in my co-host for tonight, Windy City Thetan Watch. Welcome, Windy. Glad you are here.
Good to be here. Good to be here.
Awesome. Want to let everybody know that Windy is simulcasting on his channel. So if you all wouldn't mind bouncing back and forth between channels, that would be awesome. Share the love of these creators out there. Hopefully you all got to see Windy out on the streets in Chicago today. He had some great interactions. I think he was even called a criminal today. How did that happen? That's just crazy.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Want to welcome some great stuff. Style Audit 1A. Love that you are here. You were first in the chat. Good to see you always. Suppressive Sherry, there's my honey. She will be starring any comments and questions that you might have. You know the drill. If you've got a comment or a question, put comment or a question in it. We'll always take super chats, but we also go through and read your comments and questions. Even if you don't, we just go through and talk about it. Mod extraordinaire Fuzzy Pink Handcuffs is here, as well as Mod in her junior Elron Liar is here as well. Good to see you. Junior and senior, that's Scientology terms. I don't know if y'all knew that or not, but you know,
he's a Padawan.
Co-opted. Do what?
He's the Padawan.
He is the Padawan. Also, we have no one. Always glad to have you here. We may be leaning on you tonight because after perusing some of this information now, I don't know if you ever made it to OT, if anybody out there ever makes it to OT for real, because I don't think it really exists. But there is some craziness. And I mean, this stuff is weird. It's just weird, y'all. Weird.
Absolutely.
Bridge 1872. Great to see you here as well. Kathy Scoggins, good to see you. Let's see who else we have. All right. And we have Patrick Skinner, my other ex-Scientologist here, my cramming officer. Let us know where we go wrong. We are Never Ends, and this is operating Thetan levels for Never Ends. So be nice to us as we try to make sense of something that neither of us was ever exposed to. So just have fun with us, laugh at us, make fun of us. That's all fine and dandy. And, go for it. Aubrey Fletcher, good to see you here as well. All right. So let me throw up the typical, or actually first off, I have an email, dave@declaredave.com. If you want to send me any information about the cult of Scientology or any other cult for that matter, or you'd like to just share comments or criticisms about the channel or about a particular show, feel free to email me. I can handle whatever you can send to me. Always welcome to do that. I do have a channel membership, $2.99 to join the course room. That's my only channel membership. You currently get custom emojis, emoticons, which are really cool. I think my mods out there have already thrown up the e-meters and the pixels and the Holiday Inns and the professor, the redheaded professor. So definitely join shows that you really care about this channel. Try to do 2 shows a week. These are expose shows on the cult of Scientology, and we might be broadening out into some other topics as well. Windy also does some really good stuff out there. So if you are, I'm going to throw up a couple of things here real quick. Windy has a website, and don't know if y'all knew this, but you need to go to Windy's website. That's windycitythetanwatch.com. Make sure you're checking out. He posts articles about Scientology, talks about all kinds of different encounters that he has. And then also he has his YouTube. Let me get should have had this all pulled up, but I wasn't.
You're doing fine.
Yeah. Let's see.
I'll
YouTube.
keep you on the PR team.
Yeah, there we go. I knew you were in my history here. So make sure you are checking out Windy City's YouTube. He had, like I said, he had some great encounters today, and you need to, after this stream, go check out some of his other stuff. He's out there on the front lines doing Xenu's work. So be sure to do that. He also has email. You can find out all that on his website as well. I believe it's windycitythatanwatch@gmail.com or
Correct.
at windycitythatanwatch.com. So
Yep.
be sure to do that. All right, let me throw up the typical disclaimers because we possibly might be looking at some copyrighted material. So I'll be back in 20 seconds. All right, welcome back, everybody. So, if you haven't been part of this series, you don't have to be caught up to go through OT 4 and 5, which is the 2 OT levels that we're going to be doing. This is the middle of the OT portion, the confidential portion of the bridge to total freedom or total slavery, because I think as you go up the bridge, you become more and more a slave to Scientology. And 4 and 5, we just did 3. 3 was the Xenu story. That's the one everybody knows. That's the South Park episode. That's, the aliens and the body thetans. We got introduced to body thetans, and we got introduced to all that. And we learned about BT clusters, body thetan clusters, which is these like globbed on aliens that are all over your body, right? And I'm trying my hardest to indoctrinate Wendy into Scientology. Because why wouldn't you want to be indoctrinated into Scientology, right?
I have good news. Dave is failing miserably.
Yes.
I am comfortable that I am not going to get up the bridge very far.
My stats are crashing massively. And I think every episode they crash more and more. I think I would be put into treason or confusion in the lower ethics conditions, confusion being the lowest. And there's got to be something lower than confusion, because I am beyond confused in a lot of this stuff. So, it's all good. It's all good. So we've done OT1 and OT2. Those were 2 very basic intro levels. We did OT3. That is the Xenu story. That's where you learn about the body thetans. And that's where you learn, that's where this whole thing that never existed before was suddenly thrust upon you. And as we get more, all of the levels from this point on deal with body thetans. Okay. And they deal with auditing body thetans. How do you get rid of the body thetans? Because the body thetans that are attached to you, these invisible beings that Xenu collected up in a massive tax audit, in the Galactic Confederation, he froze them in glycol. Okay, these are beings with thetans in them. We don't know if they were human. We don't know what kind of alien species they were, but he froze them, and he transported them from wherever to here, which is a prison planet called TGX, and he dumped them all into volcanoes 75 million years ago on this planet in Hawaii, and I think it was Las Palmas. And, because Hubbard has this thing about Las Palmas. I haven't figured that one out yet. And of course, these volcanoes didn't exist 75 million years ago, but who are we, right? And then he dropped massive atomic bombs on them, blew them all up, and all the beings died. Not that they wouldn't have already died by being dumped into volcanoes that didn't exist, but then he had to double down on killing them. And then all the thetans, like ribbons, floated up into the atmosphere, and they got sucked into these machines and then transported to be brainwashed. Or actually, these thetans were then sent back down to Earth to find another body to attach on, like sucker fish, like they're like parasites, or like they're all over you, and they're parasites on your body. And so OT levels are designed to get rid of them, because what we'll find out when we get to OT, I think it's OT7. When we get to OT7, we'll find out, or maybe OT6, that the body thetans are really the root of all your problems. Spoiler alert, Wendy. Spoiler alert. All of your problems, all of your engrams, all of your aberration, all of your failures, and your negative flows, and your inability to succeed is all because of body thetans.
There's just no accountability to the human anymore.
None at all. It is complete and utter discounting of the human being, because being human is not really a good thing in Scientology, right? Human emotion and reaction, HENR, is not a good thing. To be a human being, if you all were in my live last week, we went through talking about some stuff. We went through some quotes from L. Ron Hubbard, and we talked about, Sherry and I being fair gamed, and it's like, we're not allowed to have human emotion reaction. No HENR. Can't be happy, can't be sad. You just got to be like the people that Wendy sees in the orgs every day when he goes.
You know what I'm going to say is kind of interesting here is that, I get that tone, persona, portrayal when I'm at the org, but I can tell that these people, like today, twice, one time, the first early day when we got the blinds taken down, the two people were very, very, they were like high school buddies, and happy and emotive and joyful, right? In that process. So it's like, isn't that out ethic just the same as being sad or demoralized, right?
I don't think so. I think actually they're taught to raise their tone, right? They're taught to PR, to play the public relations, to be happy, and to put on a face, no matter what their issues that they're dealing with in their lives. And you remember, you used to get the yawn, right?
Right.
And then we flipped that on them, right, with the T-shirt that says "Yawn if you're in a cult." So now I think what they're doing is they are trying to portray something that isn't real. And of course, they know they're on camera. They know they're being live streamed. They know that somebody in OSA, is watching. An ethics officer, a DSA, which is a director of special affairs. That's a staff member in an org that reports directly to OSA, Office of Special Affairs. That's the dirty tricks legal department in Scientology. They're the ones that are out there trying to combat us protesters and us expose YouTubers and whatnot. So they know they're being filmed, right?
Right.
So they know they're being watched. And I think they're trying to portray this. It's just an everyday thing. It's so, and I think you mentioned something about Jessica. You had an encounter with Jessica later, and this is kind of an aside job, but I think it's important. You had an encounter later on, and Jessica actually broke her TRs.
She spoke to me. Yep.
She spoke to you.
Two things, and I'm going to say that was the odd element that they need to be that flat tone, or whatever we want to call that, to me, that because I am a suppressed person and they do believe I'm criminals, and we're going to find out why I think they believe I'm criminals shortly. But that persona to me has to be one thing. But when they're in the presence of another person they're recruiting, they're just in this really tough spot, right? That how do I be nice to the person I'm trying to court to come in, and how do I be non-responsive to the other? But she had asked me, "Can you just leave?" Was the first thing she said, and then she turned to their new recruit and said, "He's just a criminal, right?
Yeah,
he's just a criminal anyway."
But for her to even say, "Can you please just leave?" That is down TR. That is down tone. That is, to me, of course, I wasn't there, so I can't really know. But that sounded very much like an out TR. Like you're frustrated by she was frustrated by your presence, and she let her TRs go completely. And it's interesting that I think I think Bridge just said it, that Jessica could be in trouble. It's very possible that she might get some kind of a talking down to in the real world. That's what we addressing down, like this is what we would call it in the real world, right? A woodshed moment, and by the DSA or by an ethics officer or by the HCO people there. Now, whether that ends up leading to her being put under some lower condition in some ethics program, don't know, but certainly someone should be telling her, keep your manners and keep your TRs in, Jessica.
Yeah.
You're on film.
If you go about auditing Scientology, right, the idea of OTs and MEST, so they're trying to recruit this person. They finally shrink back into the organization, right? Or slink is really the term that I'd say. He's left out there on the sidewalk, and I said, I look at him, I say, hey, watch this. And I go, and I pull down, I said, I'm going to go pull down the shades. And I pulled down the shades, and they happened. And you could just see this guy look at me like, what the heck just happened here, right? Like, what does this person, what's the power that this person has?
Yep. And that's where this whole idea of being OT, and Mike here talking about, and let me just send it out again. Mike did awesome out there in Kansas where he was at the festival. He did perfect. Yes, absolutely. He showed what real, conflict protesters in the midst of conflict should do. And that is stand up for your rights until the point at which you're getting threatened with arrest. And then that's it. That's the end. And you've made your point. It was all on film. It's all on YouTube. It's out there for the world to see. It's never going away. And you get to see how completely messed up people are that don't understand that they're supporting these cults. And so that's just, Wendy is a great example, and Mike is a great example. Z News is a great example. There's so many great examples out there of what it means to protest, stand up. And that, I would say, that's an audit. That's your First Amendment auditor right there. That's what a First Amendment auditor should do, is stand up for your rights, know your rights, know that you're not going to be able to litigate on the street with the cops. Once the cops come in and they threaten you with arrest, it's time to move on. You've made your point. You've identified them. You've possibly identified the audience that is causing the problem, and then you move on. And so definitely want to continue. Make sure you're out there. Fuzzy put up the Mike's channel. That's bravery.
Yep.
Right there. That is true bravery. Because I don't know about you, but police can be intimidating in the moment. And as people like myself, and I don't know if you're like this, Wendy, or not, but I'm not typically very confrontational. It's not that I can't handle confrontation, but that's just not the norm that I operate in, right?
Yeah. I'm reactive. Right.
Yes.
That I'm never going to be the instigator, but I'm not going to let you roll over me.
Right. And so as reactors, as people that react to situations, we're not always prepared. I mean, we didn't grow up in a cult. We didn't get the TRs drilled into us. We didn't get the bull baiting drilled into us. We're having to learn how to handle this, but we're doing it the right way, which is learn through experience, not being forced into a hotel as a child and being forced to bull bait with adults in disgusting situations. And, we're out there defending the Constitution that we're entitled to. And, I'm out here on YouTube most of the time. You're out there on YouTube and in front of Chicago and at other orgs. Mike's out there in Kansas. Everybody's out there in LA. Everybody's out there in New York and Austin and just everywhere, and Boston. And
Yep.
And it's just like, not saying that there is a specific way to protest or to audit, but definitely knowing when is the time to stop. Right.
Like, I agree. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
going to say that MLH is one of those that,
Yes.
and I would take pride the same way. His statement is, I've never been arrested. And today I was talking about it, that I don't think being arrested is a credential that's necessary for a protester.
No.
That, there are some that are there and gets you the headline and everything, but I think I'm more effective being on the street. In regards to Mike, is the idea that the threat of arrest is enough for you now to move forward with civil action. Rather than take the arrest, having been threatened with arrest, you can now start the complaint process and the 1983 civil rights violation.
File complaints, and that's where I think that we talked about, I know you and I talked about this in a previous chat, was that it's going to take getting civil leaders involved. It's going to take getting politicians involved. It's going to take getting community citizens of means and of influence, probably, to understand that there's a problem here. And as long as Scientology can hide behind its religious exemption or its 501c3 exemption, wouldn't call it a religious exemption. You doesn't give you carte blanche to commit crime just because the IRS deemed you a 501c3 charity, quote unquote charity organization, although Scientology doesn't really have any charity. All the money goes up. We know that. So definitely want to also, it's just, you've been dealing with it all the time since you've been out there. And it's going to continue. Now, I also want to say those that do get arrested, and they get arrested not because of their own actions, like Nance, like others like that, they don't deserve what they're going through. And but those and nobody deserves to get swatted. Nobody deserves to get confronted by anybody. And I don't think any of the protesters and any of the auditors or any of the YouTubers out here deserve it. It's just there is a point. I truly feel like knowing when to do and when not to do, when to start and when to stop. In Scientology, they would call that start, change, and stop, but we're not going to get into that. That's too much. So definitely want to throw shout outs to Mike and you and everybody else. Okay, let's get into crazy. How about crazy? Anything else you want to say before we get into crazy? Are you prepared for crazy?
I'm ready to become crazy.
Okay. All right, folks, we are going to go into OT4 and OT5. Now, OT4 and OT5, they are old and new. There is an old version and a new version. This is the OT pack, or this is the operating Thetan level, the confidential materials. This is the OT4 and 5 combined. But what I want to do is I'm going to switch us over to a different share, which is sort of a brief sketch that I found. Somebody put this together, and shout out to them. It's out there, and I can put it in the show notes later. But these are just some very brief breakdowns of what OT4 new and old and OT5 new and old are. So OT4, the original, came out in January of 1968, and it all deals with mocking up, which is creating. Mocking up in Scientology means to just manufacture or manifest, if you will. And unmocking, and which is to remove. So you tear down, you build up and tear down. Implants. The implants are those things that Xenu's buddies in the implant stations put in your brain, like the religions of the world, like the governments of the world, like the belief systems that, Christianity and Jesus and Judaism and Islam, all this stuff are what Scientologists would call implants. So when you grow up on Earth as a Thetan, but not as a Scientologist, you're brainwashed in these movie theaters, right? When you die as a Thetan, your body drops. They call it dropping the body. And then you as a Thetan are sent to the implant station. And there's several different implant stations. I've heard about them being on the Himalayas. I've heard about them being on Mars. I don't know where they are. Could be in the spaghetti monster in the sky. I don't know. But the theory is you go into a movie theater, and if anyone has ever seen A Clockwork Orange, it's like you're strapped into a chair. This is how I envision it. And your eyes are peeled open, and you're just fed all of this material, all of this implanted material, Jesus, Muhammad, and Moses, and all this crud and ethics and the things that we as human beings deal with, Buddha and Tao and all this stuff. And then you're sent, once you've been fully implanted, you're sent back down to Earth, because this is a prison planet. You can't escape the prison planet. And you go find a new baby body. Okay, completely no previous life ever. So what OT4 here, the original OT4 was all about, was to create and destroy, mock up and unmock these implants. And they do it through this clearing course. And we've sort of hinted about the clearing course. It's a course that you can take prior to be going OT. And you go through it and you try to do this so that you can prevent getting any future implants into you, so that you can bypass the station. You can bypass the implant station, or whatever implants they try to put into you, I guess, wouldn't affect you. And then there's also some past auditing correction that you're going to do, that you're going to clean up. And the goal was originally for you to go exterior as an OT. Wendy, do you know what going exterior is?
I too, right? The one is that you've always talked about this, that the ideal way of being the perfect Scientologist is really 3 steps behind himself. But the idea that you are outside looking at or being able to observe your own reality.
The most natural state of a Thetan is to be 3 feet behind the head and controlling the body like a puppet, like a marionette, right? Because you are, as a being, as a human, you are 3 things. You're a Thetan. The spirit has no mass, has no energy. It's just some kind of godlike, lower G, godlike being. And then you're a body, which is what they often call, you've heard of meat bodies,
Yep.
Or fresh meat. And then you're a mind. And the mind is nothing but a recording device, basically. Okay, it's there to record mental image pictures. And I just saw Sherry. She just did a fist pump in the air because she loves when I do that. And so the Thetan is supposed to be in control. Now, there are times when you do want to go what they call interior or interiorization. There are times at which the Thetan does want to go into the body and take control and do things, and then come back out, but for the Thetan to be always in the body is a bad state. Okay. That means they're too introverted on themselves. They want to be able to interiorize and exteriorize at will. So that's, going exterior in OT4, the original OT4, is kind of like the end phenomena. Now,
Wait, I do have a question here.
Yes.
With what you've got highlighted here, is bypassing the implant station an all or none? So if you bypassed it, you would have no body Thetans to remove in the next lifetime. Doesn't that?
That's a good question. Whether or not you would have body Thetans, I don't know. You would be able to come back from the implant station with full and unwavering remembrance, realization. Aaron calls it like full track recall, 100% full track recall of all your past lives. And basically you would just be stuck in a little baby body,
right?
Not able to communicate. But when you do reach the point of where you can start communicating, you would be able to be a Scientologist again, right? You would just be able to, and go ask any Scientologist or ex-Scientologist. Nobody has this, right? Nobody has full track recall.
That's what I like. That's the 2 things that I've really loved about Phil Jones. Does the church let you talk about Scientology? And also, has anybody ever been able to prove to you they're clear? Right?
Exactly. In fact, Nora's talked about being past life clear. And That's not even something that they do anymore. Used to be able to attest by being on the meter. You would grab the cans at a certain age, and it's almost like, I'm not exactly sure what the phenomena of the needle, maybe it just starts floating, I don't know, without much. But theoretically, they used to be able to determine that you were past life clear. She, as a child, and she said this on her channel, was declared past life clear. But then at some point, just like everything else, Dave Miscavige nixed it. Nobody can attest to past life clear anymore.
There's no money in past life
There's
clears.
no money in past life clear. Follow the money. Follow the money. You know, there's no money in using the original L. Ron Hubbard books. They're tiny little, the basic books. They're tiny little books. They don't cost anything. No, you got to buy these giant tomes, and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars over and over and over again. Well, if you're clear, if you're past life clear, or as no one just said in the chat, if you're a natural clear, you're just go right onto OT, right? You just skip all that lower grades, just skip all that. All right. So in 1980, 6 years, actually in January of 1980, almost 6 years to the date before Hubbard passes away, because Hubbard passed away in January of 1986, he rewrites OT4 as the OT drug rundown. What does that mean? Wendy, do you have an idea, without looking at the text, what this might mean?
Whenever I always see this, and I don't equate alcohol the same way, I always feel this is when he's starting to get into the mental drugs, I know I don't class the psychoanalytic drugs or but yeah, I can definitely see here that he didn't, recreational was absolutely foreboding to him as well.
Yes.
Right.
Well, to everybody but him, because he had recreational drugs and had recreational psychiatric drugs. What this is the drug rundown, or there's two different drug processes in Scientology. There's the purification rundown. That's the sauna program, right? There's also a drug rundown, which is actually an auditing process that you go through after you've done the purification. And that is to help you work through, this is in the non-confidential, this is the open to everybody. And that is where you audit out all the reasons why you were taking drugs, why you were taking psychiatric drugs in a previous portion of your life, right? So you do the purification, and then if you're determined to have taken drugs, and possibly, I guess I'm in an X or under can tell me that you take this other rundown, again, a metered process, you're on the cans, and they go through all this process and they try to figure out how to get rid of the engrams, those moments of pain and unconsciousness that have been recorded in the engram bank, and that they try to get that out of the reactive mind. They try to figure that out. Well, guess what? Your BTs, your body thetans, well, they've got drug problems, right? So now it's not that you had drug problems, which whether or not it makes no sense if you think about this, because before you were in the OT levels, you might have had drug problems, right? You had to go through the purification. Everybody has to go through the purification rundown. That's like one of the first major processes in Scientology when you join. And then I think everybody has to go through the drug rundown, because they got to deal with drugs that you might have taken. But wait a minute. You get to find out that there's body thetans, and those body thetans are what truly, when you get to OT8 or OT7 or OT8, you learn that really the body thetans are what causes all of your aberrations. It's not that you took drugs. It's that the body thetans took drugs or were exposed to drugs. So you see
You're
the
a combination of your 5 biggest body thetans, right?
Yeah.
So they're just stealing. I can't remember the business tycoons that always talk about that you are a combination of your 5 closest friends type thing.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
that
it's
seems
like
exactly what this is.
it's like back in the 80s when everybody was saying, if you're going to get when you're a kid, right? When you're an early adolescent or a teenager and you're learning about your body and you're learning about sex, right? And they're like, no, okay, be careful now because, if you hook up with so and so, you're actually hooking up with everybody they hooked up with. Right.
Right.
So these BTs have all the drugs. So you have to cleanse them you have to basically do the drug rundown on all of the BTs, right? And you do this through the use of Class 8 auditors. So this is not a solo course. This is you're working with a Class 8 auditor who is an auditor that is capable that has OT knowledge, right? Class 5, I think, is the last level where you have, I don't know if Class 5 is like the last training level of an auditor before they get into the OT. Maybe my unders or whatever know better, but Class 8s have OT knowledge. So you're back on the meter, but you're with an auditor, and you're gonna fix all your BT's drug problems. So, yay. Right.
So what I like about this isn't right. We talked about the money earlier and the idea. It's not doubling the process. This is extreme multiplication of, right, because you got to keep going to this. That you have hundreds, thousands, whatever the number is. We know it's not one body thetan, right? But you're probably doing this just. Oh, it's such a repetitive process. And I always remember Tori saying that she just struggled on OT7.
Yeah, well, OT7 is like the longest OT level you'll do. And I don't think a lot of people get past it. Like OT8 can be done in a couple of weeks on the ship, but OT7 can take years. And a lot of people go nuts. From what I understand, a lot of Scientologists lose their marbles in OT6 and OT8. Or excuse me, OT6, OT8. Yes. Those are the two levels. Somehow if they get past OT7, they're not nuts. They don't have psychotic breaks. Maybe they do, but like she didn't, thankfully, because she's awesome and we don't want to lose her. But, it's kind of like we're not at OT6 yet. We're going to get to OT6 and OT7 and OT. We're going to do all three of those, I think, at the end because they just kind of all run together. But anyway, all right, let's go into this the old OT4 rundown, okay? And here is the rundown. You have to complete OT3.
I like that that's a symptom.
Yes. Isn't that great? I was looking at that word and I'm like, wouldn't it be like prerequisite? I mean, but and there's a warning here. It says this is in fact a grade. Now, grades are those lower level processing on the bridge, including grade 0, which every Scientologist has to go through, where they can openly communicate with anyone about anything at any time, which we know doesn't work because they don't communicate with any of us. They don't communicate with you. They don't communicate with me. They don't communicate with Aaron. They don't communicate with anybody, right? They just lock themselves away as a cult. But what Elron is saying here is that this is a grade. It's an OT grade. And so it's kind of weird. It's and I've got the dictionary loaded up, y'all. The dictionary is here because I'm not a Scientologist, but I have stayed at a Holiday Inn Express, and I got to have the dictionary open. And it says, often the case has to, 1, be discharged with lots of corrective actions. What do you think that means, Wendy?
It's expensive.
That's really what it is. It's basically
fail, start again, fail,
yeah.
Start again, fail, start over, or whatever that is.
Yeah, it's basically your case supervisor looking at your chart, looking at your PC or your OT chart or your OT folder, whatever, looking at your PC folder, not just your OT, and going through and saying, I think they need to fix this. They need to fix this. They had a withhold here. They had an overt here. They had a present time problem with their spouse at this point. And then, oh, by the way, this auditor sucked. And this auditor over here didn't know what the hell they were doing. And this auditor over here used an old version of the book. And, and so what they do is they make you pay money to fix everything. And then basically you have to have OT3 must be run on the pre-OT by the auditor or at least cleaned up. So already it's like he's admitting that when you attested to OT3, it wasn't correct. Is that the way you read this?
So yes, and it becomes that I need to keep extending. That at the time he finished writing OT3, it was the end, and the thought that, well, nobody's going to get here, and then he realized, wait, people get here. Now how do I spin the story differently so that I can extend the process of you continuing to contribute money to my coffers?
We got to keep the con going, right? And, he kept creating these different levels because he knew, as a good cult leader does, that he has to keep his members of the cult continually wanting more, continuing to always fail to reach the real end goal of whatever enlightenment they're supposed to have, right? Because the only person in a cult that can be enlightened is who? Who do you think is the only person in a cult who can ever reach the point of enlightenment?
The self. Well, I guess me as an operating thetan, but the self.
Well, the cult leader is the only person in a cult that is ever allowed to be enlightened, right? I mean, Hubbard.
You're right, that everybody has to keep following. That
everybody
I
has
have
to
be the
keep
pinnacle.
aspiring to reach that same point that Hubbard reached, or the Jonestown guy, or the Rashaswani, or whatever
Jim
his name
Jones,
is.
right? The Koresh.
If you ever reach the same point as the cult leader, then you are now directly in line to usurp the power of that cult leader, right?
I'm guessing my wrong answers are putting everybody at rest, that I'm not succumbing to Scientology.
Well, I mean, it's good to know that they don't have to ask you to blink twice, right? So basically already he's basically saying, well, you got to OT3, but now we might have to clean a few things up, right, before you can go on. So moving on, we got this rundown. And so here is the actual steps. So we do rudiments to GF, and that is, or to FN, so floating needle. So you run rudiments. Your rudiments are all your present time problems and your overts and withholds and all your, did you eat? Did you sleep? Did you take drugs? Did you get, all that good stuff? Then you rehab your drugs. Okay. Then you do this, this valence shifter. Now, for those of you that don't know, we're going to switch to the dictionary and we're going to go to valence. What is a valence? Well, a valence is an identity complete with bank mass, bank meaning the engram bank and the reactive bank and the all that good stuff, or mental image picture mass of somebody else, okay, with the identity other than the identity of you, okay? And basically what it means is, Wendy, you've assumed the identity of your mother, or you've assumed the identity. You're acting like somebody else. You're kind of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes and acting like them without even knowing that you're acting like it. You've assumed their identity, their valence. So what has to happen is you have to find out which of those valences would be safe for you to be in, whatever that really means. But anyway, then you have to rehab your ARC straight wires. So your affinity, reality, and communication. Straight wires is just the process of cleaning up all your ARCs and all that stuff. Let's go back to the dictionary and let's look at what is straight wire. Scrolling down, and straight wire. Straight wire is simply talking about stringing a line from cause to effect through the past. And it's basically like he's saying stringing a wire. So it's you going through your ARC issues from beginning to end with all the problems that you've got, that you might have with people. Does that make sense? It's like step by step fixing each issue.
Like, a chain of dots.
Right.
Or link.
Then we have to rehab R6EW. Well, what the heck is R6EW? Let's go back to the dictionary. And we go, I don't know if R6EW, it is a, R6 is the Xenu story, I believe. It
came up a lot last time in the R3 space that there was always this fear that you had R6EW that you hadn't resolved, whatever that is of the R.
It's dramatization. And no one says it here. Routine 6 end word. So that is remember we talked about that when you get an auditing command, that very last word, you have to check the needle. Right. Okay. So that's that. Then we have to do another prep check for OT3. Wonderful. Then we have to rehab OT5 and 6, which makes no sense to me because we haven't gotten there yet.
That throws me a bit there.
So, and then we have to look at any overruns. Overruns are any kind of auditing procedure where the auditor went beyond the floating needle. They kept going. When you get a floating needle after doing a bunch of auditing, the session is supposed to end. You've got very good indicators. You're smiling, laughing, whatever, cackling, and your needle is gently floating back and forth unless you're David Miscavige and he doesn't even know what a floating needle, he doesn't think anybody knows what a floating needle is. But the auditor kept going. Okay. And then you also so you have to fix all those. Then you have to go through what can you confront. So these are auditing questions, and the auditor would say, well, what can you confront? And there's all these different things. And then the goal is to exteriorize. But if you don't, you have to do 7 of these. So repeat this process for 7 times until you do go exterior. Now, I got to ask you, can you imagine reaching a point where you're just like, I'm exterior, I'm done, I can't do it anymore?
Yes. I promise you, Scout's honor, I'm exterior right now. Now, the last question there, right? The what can you confront? I assume that the answer to that is never nothing, right? That you always have to come up with something.
Right. You need to be able, in my opinion, I could be wrong, but you would need to be able to identify something you confront, even if it's confronting yourself. I could be wrong, but you have to be able to confront whatever comes your way. Theoretically, Scientologists are supposed to be able to confront anything. That's the whole point of this whole process of grades and auditing and everything, and being able to confront everything. So when you have this valence shifter, we talked about that. Then we've got, I'm going to skip that. Then we have the end phenomena of OT4. So this is the end result, is that you are supposed to be certainty of self, you, the thetan, as a being.
Is this being the thetan, or is this being understanding you're a human?
I would believe this is the thetan.
Okay.
So the thetan needs to be certain that they are a being. Self or I, all those are supposed to mean the thetan. The body is a meat pocket, right? It's just flesh and bones and blood. And the mind is this whole nother recording device, like an Ediphone or something. But the being is the I, is the me, is the thetan. So here is this old part here says, the main idea on OT4 solo is to mock up, create, and unmock, which is also known as blow, each line of the clearing choruses, goals, purposes, and masses. We talked about that in a previous, doing the basic N words, confusion, objects, all this stuff. It was all that crazy crap that, and you have to have all the perceptics of force, effect, heat, impact, unconsciousness of the original implant. So you got to mock up and create Jesus. You got to mock up and create all this stuff. And then you got to get the tone arm, to cause the tone arm to rise. Then you spot it. So the tone arm goes up, and then you find out, it says, oh, what is that? Okay, that is me thinking about Jesus or Allah or whatever. And then you unmock it, you blow it out. And then tone arm falls and the mass erases, because that's the whole goal, is you erase mass. Then you mock it up again and erase it, and you just keep doing it over and over. We've got the repetitive motion of Scientology. We've talked about that in previous lives. And then you keep doing that until you get to a floating needle. Then you mock up heat until your body feels warm. Ooh, yeah. Don't you want to feel warm in the auditing room?
Don't they have electric blankets? We can fix this.
Right? Then you got to do this. This is the old OT4, right? This is not the new one, but this is the old one. Then you postulate mass. So you cause into existence some mass in your, postulating as you think of something and it comes together. It's also kind of like mocking up. And you say, I have mass with a reactive mind. And then you do that. And you mock it up again and you destroy it. Then you mock up a non-atomic light and then unmock it. So you create a non-atomic light. There's a light. The light's off. There's a light. The light's off. There's a light. The light's off. And you run it to a cognition, which is a realization. I can create light. I guess. I don't know. I'm just, Then you run your ARC breaks, your problems and withholds, anything to do with MEST, matter, energy, space, and time. We've seen that. Nothing new there. And those are then you do same thing, but with long durations about yourself. So this one here was about everything that's not you. Then you do everything that is dealing with you. Then you run any overts or withholds in your current life or within the whole, it says track. So I'm assuming the current track. There's your current track, which is your current life. And then there's the whole track, which is your all life from immortal, whatever.
Last 76 million years or trillion years.
And then you do this, scan out lightly. This is all solo. You do this all solo. And then you do, add up hours of all your sessions as you go along. Then you come up with that number. Then you run your favorite havingness project. I can have this car. I can not have this car. I can have this book. I cannot have this book. I can have that job. I cannot have that job. That's what that is. And then you can run spot an object. I see that door. I don't see that door. And you just do this over and over again. Then you go to a park or beach. I want to go to the beach. Part 11. Doesn't everybody want to go to the beach or a park? And you spot look at matter. You spot look at energy. Spot look at space. Spot look at time. Spot look at matter, energy, space, and time. This is that outdoor. I'm looking and doing, when you see Scientologists out there with their clipboards, they're doing something similar, but in the non-confidential lower
Right.
levels.
So that survival rundown just seems like this is survival rundown on steroids, right?
Exactly. He's recycling all this old crap, right? He's just recreating the same processes, but he's putting it into an exclusive category and claiming that at the end you can attest to OT4. Okay. That was in 68. Fast forward to 1980, 6 years before he drops his body. Here, he says, we're going to be looking at body thetans. Now, notice the previous didn't really have anything to do with body thetans. There were no body thetans in 68. In 80, there are body thetans. One thing to note is Hubbard came up with this version of OT4 while in seclusion. While he was hiding, he came back to the United States in 75 off the Apollo, off the boat, and they landed in Daytona, Florida, and then they bought the buildings in Clearwater. And then Hubbard was living in Clearwater first, or actually he was living in Dunedin, I think. And then he gave himself up basically to a tailor. He announced to this tailor he wanted a suit and he wanted new clothes because he needed to look good. And he wasn't willing to wait for his tailor in England. So he got a tailor here in the United States. And this tailor happened to be a science fiction fan, and they got to talking, and Hubbard started boasting about who he was and all this stuff. And then, of course, the tailor goes back and tells his wife about how he met Hubbard. So now Hubbard has to run. So Hubbard fled with his messengers and some other people and went into seclusion, complete seclusion. And it was during this that he started inventing all this upper level rework, the new OTs levels and all this stuff. And it was here that he came up with body thetans, clusters, and drugus. So what does he say?
Is it
Stop me.
possible this guy was crazy?
Have to remember that it's widely speculated that Hubbard suffered from prefrontal epilepsy. And that as part of that prefrontal epilepsy, he at least had hypergraphia, which was just a constant need to write, right? Yeah. And it's likely that he liked to take benzos. He liked to take some other drugs. He was recovering, sort of like he had that motorcycle accident in Lisbon, I think it was, or somewhere, Morocco or somewhere, where he crashed a Harley and he was injured, and basically his whole entire personality changed. So it's likely he could have been on pain medications. It's likely he drank, he smoked, he liked his drink, he liked his smokes, and he died having psychiatric drugs and benzodiazepines and all kinds of stuff in there. So it's likely he was inventing this crap. He could have been having hallucinations. I don't know. We don't know. What he says here is BTs and clusters are affected by drugs. They mock up the biochemistry and they mock up the drug and drug incidents. They are all responsible for all the drug problems and the drug incidents in your life. Drug taking in this lifetime re-stimulates earlier incidents of drug taking on the track. So you as a thetan in the current life, if you're taking drugs, you're re-stimulating you're re-stimulating all of the previous times that the body thetans and the clusters of body thetans on your body took drugs. You with me so far?
Yeah.
Blink twice if you're still there. You will see that drug taking in this lifetime causes a highly multiple re-stim. That's re-stimulation. A drug incident can be a cluster making incident. In other words, if you've got a few body thetans kind of just hanging out by themselves on your body, by you taking drugs, you can cause them all to clump together. Okay?
Yep.
earlier drug cultures on the track were much worse than this drug culture. And what he's talking about here is the world, the drug culture in 1980. Remember, this is 1980. Do you remember, Wendy, this political movement in the 1980s? There's even a slogan.
Miss Reagan? Miss Reagan?
Yes, there's this slogan about the war on drugs.
Yep.
Can you tell? Can you kind of see some connections in here, you know, of current time stuff? We've got DC-8s, which were the ones those are the space planes that were transporting the Thetans from Xenu's planet to here. Well, at that time, DC-8 was a very modern plane. Movie theaters are the places where you're getting implants. Well, Hubbard was a product of the golden age of film. Drug issues in the 1970s and 60s, 70s, and 80s. You've got the hippie movement. You've got the beatnik movement. You've got the drug gang wars and the. I mean, it's just like he's just taking current events and fabricating this crap, right? But he's saying that today's, we'll say 1980s drug culture is not as bad as previous drug cultures on the track. So maybe he thought in 80 that the drug culture was a little bit better than it was maybe in the 60s or 50s, or the BCEs, or the 70 million years ago. Who knows?
Yeah.
In
the short term, right? The 60s, absolutely, right? The 60s was where a lot of the naturalist the cults, there was a spike in this idea of the drug culture, the anti-establishment culture,
yes,
and everything was going on there.
Counterculture.
Counterculture, right. And by the 80s, that is now succumbing a little bit. But you're right. Great. He's not talking about one generation. Well, hopefully. He's thinking that we've had cycles for millennia.
Yes.
In regards to what's going on.
Yes. And trillions and pentalillions, or whatever they call it. And so he's saying, but now wait, he's going to blame psychiatrists, priests, and doctors. We're all one and the same person, and they are the ones that used drugs. And they're the implanters, because you got to remember, the implant stations are run by the psychs. Xenu is controlled by the psychs, or was. So they're the implanters, because they used, if you use drugs, or then you were likely an implanter. Some implanters use drugs, either as part of the implant incident or to keep a population enslaved. So when BTs and clusters who have whole track drug incidents are re-stimulated by this lifetime drug incident. So when you took down that LSD sugar cube, right? You re-stimulated all the drug incidents of all the BTs and BT clusters on your body. And if it's severe enough, you can form new clusters, and those clusters get thrown. So it's just like this exponential problem, right?
Yeah.
And then it says any residual drugs remaining in the body keeps these BTs and clusters in re-stimulation. And they, by mocking it up themselves, because they're Thetans, they can mock things up. They're not in control of what they mock up, but they want to hold on to the drugs and keep the drug pictures, those mental image pictures, in re-stimulation. Okay, they don't have any control. The body Thetans don't have any control, but they like the drugs. They like the druggists, right? And then there are two factors. There is residual drugs in your body, which theoretically, if you did the Purif, you're supposed to have gotten rid of. And if you did the drug rundown thereafter, you're supposed to have wiped out any. But the body Thetans have residual drugs, possibly. And they're stuck. The BTs and clusters are stuck in the whole track drug incidents, which they continue to mock up. They continue to create. The residual drug deposit in the body causes a drug effect and tends to keep body Thetans and clusters in re-stimulation. It is this residual drug deposit that is rid, I'm going to say it, that is gotten rid of by sweat out on the purification rundown. So it's not, I mean, it's like he's just recycling again
Yep.
all the previous crap that he made you do in the lower levels. And so they can, BTs and clusters are stuck. They keep mocking it up. They mock up the drugs as well as the incidents. So they'll create the whatever, and it could be, I guess it could be alien drugs, right? It could be Xenu drugs for all we know. It doesn't have to be stuff on this earth. I guess it could be drugs on another planet. And that alone makes your body think that drug is because a Thetan can create the physical universe. They can manifest matter, energy, space, and time. And because they are mocking up the drugs and because they are stuck in it totally, you get the apparency that there is a residual drug in your body. So there might not be this alien drug from 20 million years ago in your body, but you taking LSD or you taking marijuana or you taking whatever, aspirin or diazepam or whatever, create this apparency that keeps the BTs keep creating it, this mental picture, making you think that you have all this. And it's deadly. It's deadly.
Wait, no, I believe it's absolutely deadly.
It's absolutely deadly. It's absolutely deadly. And it tends to hold on, that keeps the BTs and clusters together. And then the Purif will take care of some of it. But you have to do this thing called freewheeling, which is described about in Science of Survival. Let's look at what freewheeling is. Let's go back to the dictionary. Always go to the dictionary in Scientology, right? Let's see, is it in here? Freewheeling is not in here. So sad. Okay, well, dictionary failed. Pointed out that Guck, I don't know who Guck is, caused some. So where it is pointed out that Guck in All About Radiation, which is the book that he invented, Dianazine, which is supposed to, we're not going to get there, can cause the somatic strip. The somatic strip is the part of the brain that all the somatic illnesses that you deal with come from. And then Guck,
So psychosomatic, made up.
yes,
Brain. Okay.
psychiatrically or it's not real. But he thinks that myopia and asthma and all that stuff is all just psychosomatic. Having a pain in your back or having headaches is all somatic. And then Guck is this combination of vitamin B1 and our good buddy niacin. Yeah, there's the good old niacin, right? And these cause BTs and clusters to freewheel through engrams they are stuck on. They don't get down to a basic being the very first incident where something goes wrong. And then they unstick from the stuck point. This permits the engram to drop out of chronic restimulation. So by taking Guck, in freewheeling, you can get rid of this stuff. And then we have another phenomenon where persons below OT3 would not be aware of this, that B1 and niacin, by moving BTs and clusters out of the engram they are chronically stuck in, permits these BTs and clusters to drop out. So basically what he's saying here is when you do the Purif as a PC, as someone who's not OT,
right,
you're actually causing these BTs and these BT clusters to fall out, to stop being restimulated. You don't know it yet. Okay. But it's happening.
Preventive medicine.
It is preventative medicine, right? And then we're going to skip through some of this, but maybe it says here, this, you should also know that when a BT or cluster is freewheeling through such a drug incident, it can turn on the apparency of that drug in the body, which mean, it says this could be puzzling if you didn't know this datum. Datum is a fact, basically. And maybe the guy has never taken LSD or phenobarbital in his lifetime and doesn't have any of that drug in his body. But the BT or the cluster mocks up the apparency of that drug. So you may have never taken these drugs, but the BT might just create it out of whatever. And that makes you feel like you are on that drug. And then there are other drugs that have, on the whole track, quite different from any drugs in existence today. This could be the alien drugs, right? So during the purification rundown, you could have a BT or cluster freewheel through and out of a stuck drug engram. So you're actually already taking care of your BTs and clusters, and you don't even know it yet because you're not privy to the OT3 information or the OT4 information. And then the BT or cluster freewheels on out of that stuck point, ceases to mock up the drug in that body. Hence, we get a two-way result on the PureF by getting rid of both the residual drug, so the real drug. This is all bullshit, guys. Please understand. This is all bumpkiss crap. It's not real. It's not scientific. But to a Scientologist who's in this, who's an OT, they believe this crap. Get rid of the residual drug and any apparency of that drug. And then you go on, and then you run the NED drug rundown. So this is the net. So you've got New Era Dianetics drug rundown after the purification rundown. That's where I was talking about. There's that other, you do the purif and then you do the drug rundown. You run all this stuff. You run R3Rs, which is reality processes. And then you do all this other stuff. And then you blow many of these BTs and clusters, never being aware that you're actually doing this. And then continue on. You when you do blow, you find the position of the cluster on your body, right? Then you limit your attention to that. We talked about that in OT2, where we had these weird diagrams or whatever. Like, remember we had it's just weird. It's all OT2 and 3 is weird. And then you focus on that and you figure out the incident. Is it an injury, illness, a drug, shock, implant, heat, freezing, cold, electrical? You deal with that, date it, locate it, handle it, check for any copies of it that might have been created by other processes. And then your case supervisor will do a 53 on you, which is a check sheet, another rundown to make sure you're doing it right. And then you'll shut off any somatics that you've got. You'll do case histories. If you have an LSD case that you ran, and then all this other stuff, and just to move on, you're basically processing drugs with BT. You're processing the drugs out of your body and then out of the body thetans and clusters. And then here's your setup. You do the purification rundown. It's essential. And then you do the drug run, the OT drug rundown. So based on a folder,
can't be, while you can do purification at class 5 in Chicago, this being part of the confidentials, right? You can't do the OT.
You only do them at an advanced org.
Yeah. Wow.
Only at an advanced org can you do any of these OT processes. So then you got this folder study. Ooh, didn't we mention that earlier? Your case supervisor is going to look at your folder and they're going to determine, what you have to do. Gosh, sorry, y'all. Liquid Death, not a sponsor, but it's a good drink. So you do all these handling correction lists, your GF40s. These are all just forms and lists and rundown processes. Case supervisor series 1 through 10, case supervisor 17. We're not going to go through all this because it would take us forever. And you got a lot of repairs and stuff going on. Basically, you said it earlier, Wendy. What do you think this all really amounts to?
Money. Do it again. So, money. And again, that and to what you alluded to, he's not incredibly creative here. It is a replay of, with a couple extra adjectives of the last chapter, right?
It's like Hollywood remaking a film from the 80s today, and they just change a little bit up, right? They just recycle the same plot line. It's the same plot line, or it's the same plot elements with maybe a different character involved, or maybe a different whiz bang, or maybe a different MacGuffin involved, right?
You know, what's that style? What's the style of music or the movie where you basically see the very short movie and then you see a replay of the movie from everybody else's point of view?
Not sure what
you-
that is.
So there'll be that style of, so here's what you saw happen, but from the perspective of the protagonist, here's really what happened, and the antagonist, here's what happened, and it feels like this is just
It's like POV film or something, point of view
Yeah.
film or something. It Hubbard, got to remember, Hubbard never invented anything.
Correct.
All he did was he went out and he borrowed from here and borrowed from here and borrowed from here. He borrowed from, the New Thought movement, the New Age movement, Eastern philosophies, Western religions, and then he borrowed from his own science fiction writing. He borrowed from other science fiction writing. The whole idea of Xenu is actually possibly complete plagiarism of other science fiction writers or even comic book writers. And so he couldn't really invent just whole cloth new stuff, right? He just borrowed from everybody else. He plagiarized from everyone else. And so you go through all this process, and then at completion, the pre-OT will be in very good shape. You're going to be in very good shape, Wendy. Doesn't that make you just so happy, right? You're just going to be like, oh my gosh, I feel so good. You'll be well audited and case supervised. You'll make faster case gain, faster learning rate. You're going to be, you'll blow a lot of these BTs and clusters. And then each of these methods given herein have been tested and proven workable. There's your guarantee. There's your warranty, right? There's your non-scientific, non-empirical. So
wait, go back to the next statement after you highlighted that. Did people actually go through this and say, "Can I get another? Can I get the brown acid?" Right?
It's I don't know, but like, provided you do not make the error of broadly asking for drugs on cases at this level, so don't ask for that.
And broadly
you now have
seems
the
like a
means for
strange word there, right? That my expectation is 0 drugs is the appropriate amount of drugs that L. Ron Hubbard believes are correct. So broadly asking for.
Well, but see, you got to remember, you're not supposed to ask for things like aspirin, right?
Right.
Aspirin is one of those drugs for whatever reason that is just there to treat a somatic. It's not really there to do anything. And that was more of the prevalent common drug, over-the-counter drug, I think, in his lifetime. That was one of the few things that was invented during his lifetime, right?
Yep.
And, things like non-steroidal anti-inflammatories and acetaminophen and things like that were a bit probably newer. But even then, I think you're really not supposed to, as an OT, you're not supposed to have to ask for any of this stuff. I mean, you're not. That's why they all think they can just cure themselves of cancer and all this other stuff. All right, let me quickly throw up a stinger so that we can move on. All right, we're going to get through this. We're going to go through OT5 a little bit faster. Let's go back to my brief. So OT5, the original one, also came out in January 68. This is a series of drills directed at pre-OT's handling of and relationship to MEST, or the physical universe. They're to be done exterior, but they've now been replaced by new OT5. Well, what is new OT5? New OT5 that came out in 78. Notice that new OT5 came out 2 years before new OT4. So OT4 and 5, the originals, came out the same year. And then Hubbard was like, old OT5 sucks. So I'm going to create new OT5. And then 2 years later, he's like, OT4 sucks. So I'm going to create new OT4.
Yeah. So, I mean, I definitely think that Dave is a much more money-hungry person than L. Ron was. And L. Ron, he was on the upswing of science, right? The idea that we talked about these New Age cults and counterculture elements. So he had a tailwind helping him. So he didn't necessarily have to worry about money the same way that Miscavige has to worry about money in these spaces. But that idea that 5 comes, right, the idea of 5, and then in my mind I'm playing, well, that worked out well. We got double the money on 5. Why don't I replay number 4, right?
Right. Well, I mean, at the time, there was no tax exemption. They had it briefly, lost it. And for the rest of L. Ron Hubbard's life, and that's why he wrote that you couldn't do giveaways, you couldn't do donations type stuff, because there was no tax benefit. There was no, he had to create all this crap, all the services and books, and keep rewriting. A lot of his books that I have read, and I've read a few of them, they just repeat themselves over and over and over. He cranks out a new book that's basically a retelling of a previous book, or it's a slightly altered version, so that he can sell another book, because that's the only way he can make money.
So
And
no
he does the
ethical
same
publisher would have, since he's self-published, he could get all those books through, and nobody cared that it was the same book over and over again. No
Well, yeah, but
self-respecting publisher would do
and a lot of times, a lot of his original books were published by somebody else. It wasn't until they didn't always have their own publishing arm. So early on, he had to publish through Harper or all these other publishers. But it's the same thing, though. He would write a new book. Let's say he wrote Dianetics, and then he wrote Science of Survival. Then he wrote Self-Analysis. Then he wrote, all these different. And if you read them, you read a lot of the same junk.
Right.
Just a slightly altered telling. Maybe a different anecdote that he's thrown in there. Maybe a slightly new process that he introduces. And it's the same thing here. He has to keep coming up with, because the only way the orgs can make money is by selling services and selling training and selling books. There was no real donation process at the time, because there was no tax exemption. I totally believe that had Hubbard wanted tax exemption, he charged David Miscavige with getting tax exemption and getting the all clear. And Dave didn't get that before he died. But I guarantee you, if Hubbard was still alive in 1993, he would have been so happy to have tax exempt status. He would have been all for getting donations. I totally 100% believe that if he could have gotten it, he would have loved having tax exempt status, and he would have been all for the IAS donations and the ideal orgs. Totally. Because when he died, I think he had like some $100 million available to him that was squirreled away. I use the word squirrel in the original fashion, tucked away in walls and all. He had all kinds of money in walls all around him, but he lived like a pauper. That's the difference, is he did not live because he was in hiding, though. If Hubbard had not been in hiding, he would be living much bigger life. So,
yeah. All
right. So that was that. In 78, series of rundowns directed at clearing the pre-OT's body of body thetans.
I'm not.
Oh,
able
wait,
to
sorry.
follow what
I'm
you're
on the
reading. You
wrong.
might have a
I'm on the
different-
wrong. Yeah. All right. So this is we're back at this. So new OT5, new era Dianetics for OTs. Series of rundowns directed at clearing the pre-OT's body of body thetans, with some attention on body thetans which are causing particular conditions, including health conditions, rock slams. So that's kind of weird, right?
Yep.
You got a health problem, but we got this rock slam. Remember, the rock slam is when the needle just way goes down, like just, and that's thought to be you've got evil intentions, but it's in evil intentions of the body thetans, not you. Previously, if you had a rock slam, it was you had evil intentions against Scientology, against Miscavige, against Hubbard, and something like that. Here, no. It's the body thetans, right? And it's any PTSness that you've got. So any potential trouble sources that you've got, that's caused by the body thetans, not you. And then this is a class 9 audited. So this is not solo. Okay. When we get to OT 6, that's solo knots. We'll talk about that next time. All right, real quick, let's switch over to this other tab. And he talks about the physical universe. Who cares? Then there's tremendous power in the universe. As you exteriorize from the physical universe at OT5, you discover what MEST is. You discover what the physical universe is. It's not like you didn't already know. And you do some solo auditing on this level, but that's not really solo knots. But you've got this whole, we spot in the room again. We spot a body, spot 2 spots on your body. You're basically doing all this crap to find space, time, mass, and energy. It's all you're doing. But you're theoretically doing it on the sun, doing it outside, doing it until your needle does things, doing all this stuff. Locate a moving object, locate a spot in your body. Again, repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And then you do this with your eyes, lying down with your eyes shut. Eyes wide shut, anybody? No, I'm just kidding. And then you've got all these, make it go backwards, perceive it with all perceptions. Perceptions being taste, smell, touch, sense, all that crap. Shift it in time, rearrange it, duplicate it. So you're basically doing, and this is all very much classic Scientology, right? And then you've got some stuff that you do outside again. You can kind of see how Hubbard evolved his processing. He starts doing all this stuff where you're doing stuff outside and you're doing stuff laying down, kind of like a very psychoanalysis process. And then as the OT levels got rewritten, he got much more defined. Instead of rinsing and repeating the lower grade stuff, which is what he does here, survival rundown on steroids again. He then in new OT4 and new OT5, it's all about this other stuff. Right. Notice your body. Walk and notice a change in viewpoint. It's all very much like the other stuff. But then
100% that they have the hints of, or the recollection or the recall to everything that we've been doing on these prior 3 levels, yes, plus the pre-clear activities.
Yes. But in 78, 79, he changed it all. And you have to do all this prerequisite stuff. Notice he doesn't call it symptoms. He calls them prerequisites here. So I don't, he says things can go out of order. Then you do all these, knots. Okay, these knots numbers. So you do knots 4, 27, number 2, knots 27. You're like, what the hell are these knots? Right? Are these like Boy Scout knots? Are these like sailing knots? No. You ask yourself, what are they? Here they are. My body thetans are acting up in my stomach. Knots 1. And this is somebody basically put together this thumbnail of knots 1 through 55. And these are just kind of short summaries. And we're going to go through these super, super quick. Knots 1 is just the theory of knots. Right? Knots 2 is can't run engrams or do Dianetics after clear because a clear has erased his own bank. Right? That's important. You don't do Dianetics after clear. You have to do new era Dianetics after clear. It will apply only to your demons. And then LRH states that clear should proceed to the OT levels quickly to avoid these problems. Knots 3, you've got secondary engrams. So you've got Dianetic assists. That's the touch assists and all that kind of stuff. Then you've got knots 4, you've got knots 5. Highly recommend you all Google this stuff, but you've got all these different knots things. And basically OT5 is you go through all these different check forms and all this different checklists, and you're doing all this with an auditor, okay? Not solo. So you're on the cans with a class 9 auditor. Does that make sense?
Yeah. The thing when you say 55, and I think with an auditor, and the auditor is a paid session, right? The 12.5 hour.
Oh yeah.
Banks of time.
Every auditing session is paid, even when you do it on yourself.
That this just seems incredibly expensive, because I don't imagine that this doesn't happen in the real time that we're reading it, right? That my expectation is you have stumbles, you have falls, that it's not just as simple as reading this element and being cleared.
I mean, I guess it could be that maybe you do go through these pretty quickly. I don't know. We would need to talk to somebody that went through this process. Maybe I can get Tori on or something. We can talk to her about what it was like to do OT5. Does this happen really quickly? Yeah. My guess is it happens quicker than we think, because you got to get to OT. You got to get through knots so that you can, with an auditor, so that you can then get through to solo knots, which is OT6. OT6 and OT7 are done at flag. OT7 is where you're even, that's the one that's really long. But think of this as sort of like doing one of the lower grades. Actually, I'm not even sharing the right. There we go. Sorry. Here's all the program. Here's all the steps, and he's broken them down into categories, perception steps, and all this stuff. And so you can see it's a check sheet. You check it off, right? As the auditor goes down, they through all this stuff, they check it off. It may be that you get through number 5 pretty quick. I don't know.
Yeah, but then, so we're seeing a lot of repeat. So it feels like you do 11, 12, 11, 12,
Yep.
27 pretty
11,
consistently
11,
because it
11.
seems like prep, do the thing. Prep, do the thing.
And you ask yourself, well, what is 11? Well, let's go look at 11, right? Past auditing has to be checked for errors. So that's not even really an auditing problem. It could just be a case supervise issue. Some of this could just be a case supervision type thing. So that's why maybe 11 is repeated over and over, is that your CS or your auditor is just ensuring that it was done, right?
Yeah.
So, and then what's 12? Well, let's go look at 12. Detailed explanation about checking past auditing. It's probably not that's probably not a big auditing function. That's just more of a, the auditor's asking you maybe, asking you about your past auditing. NOTS 13, paperwork needed for the procedures. Yeah. It's not
the
really.
Folders must have been massively thick.
Oh,
I mean, some of these folders just must have been stupidly thick.
They're tomes, and they're folio size. So they're 11 by 14 or 8.5 by 14 or folio. They're legal
paper,
size.
yeah.
Pieces of paper, depending upon where you are in the world. So a lot of these might not even take very long. They might just be, well, if I did all of 11, everything's ready for it. Anyway, so you do that, you get through all this, and then you get to the end phenomena, which, if I'm remembering end phenomena, let me get down to, I can't remember what the end phenomena of OT5 was. NOTS 27. So NOTS 27. So NOTS 27 is the end phenomena. Look at this. A body as perceived by a thetan is transparent. Before being OT, the thetan, here a person doing NOTS, will see demons instead. The demons are so much like the thetan that they can affect the way thetans look at existence, while matter, energy, space, and time can't affect the way thetans perceive the world. NOTS is mainly concerned with things that think they are part of a person's body, but are not. Detailed instructions about procedure under different heads, warning about trying to repair all or too much past auditing, discussion about what phenomena to possibly expect in auditing at the different steps, general exercising pattern of difficult demons followed by several easy ones. Cognitions or end phenomena to be expected at different steps are the clearing up of body distortions, a cognition of I am well. That's your end phenomena right there. Awareness of the correct relationship between demons and your own body. Intense cognitions of personal identity. Here it is. The end phenomena of NOTS is when the person has a transparent body, a defined relation to other people's difficulties, and when he finds himself to be alive and himself.
Hold on. One question. So in that doc, we keep on seeing pre-OT. Is this like pre-clear before you're into the confidential levels? Is this pre-OT meaning 8, or is this pre-OT just meaning the person that's on this particular
I believe
level
it is
before they
pre.
complete this level?
It is pre-OT 8, and
Okay.
OT 8 is considered to be the first real OT level.
Gotcha.
Um,
Oh,
but
the 9 must be amazing.
well, maybe.
Damn it.
I don't know who. Maybe somebody knows. So that is basically OT4 or OT4 and 5, new and old each. Let's go through and do some housekeeping here. Elron Liar says, question, how many Scientos do you think would leave if given the chance? 80%? I think, yeah, I mean, 90?
You know, that the conference. So I'm going to say Jessica's a first gen, right? The person that I talked to today.
Is she first gen?
Yeah. Well, let's see here. Yeah, I do think so because she had very non-Scientology desires, right? Singing, dancing, a lot of that, and she went on to staff. Let's say she's newly indoctrinated. There was a person with conviction there today, right? That
Yeah.
I felt that I was being talked to by a believer, right? That why would she say criminal? Why would she ask me to leave if she wasn't a true believer?
I don't know. I think that the higher up you get, the more affluent you are, the less you want to leave.
Yep.
The less affluent you are, the more you want to leave. And probably the more Sea Org you are, there's probably more Sea Org members that want to leave than there are staff members than there are public. I mean, public, if I'm just an individual Scientologist and I'm the only one in my family, then in Scientology, then I mean, it's probably not a big deal if I just decide to go off lines, if I just decide not to show up at the org anymore. Of course, I'm going to be hounded by the Regs all the time, but I think it's a sliding scale. I think Sea Org members, there's more Sea Org members that want to leave than there are staff that want to leave, than there are public that want to leave.
Yeah.
And then compound that by what generation you are, like you said, with just being first generation. And then, it's sliding scale down from that. All right. Lori says, I'm watching Declare Dave on another channel. It's on my TV. I can't chat there. Thank you, Dave and Wendy. Thank you, Lori.
Thanks, Lori.
Bridge 1872 says, I wish body thetans were the source of all my problems. But Bridge, they are. According to Hubbard, they are the source. No one says, as a kid or Sea Org member, you would hear, knock off the HE&R. No human emotion and reaction, folks. Don't you dare. Auditing Scientology, Kansas City. Mike says, anyone know of a civil rights attorney in Missouri Western District? Call out there to everybody. Anybody out there? I don't.
Yep.
So
I'll try to put that as a post tomorrow as well. See if we can get MD Media to pull that in. He gets quite a bit of that.
Antics of a Mama Squirrel. Good to see you. Wasn't it Leo that said they declared him past life clear? He was recruited right away to the Sea Org. Yes. He was, Nora was, somebody else was. Those are the two that I know of. Fuzzy says, I bet that criminal Wendy knows all about the drug rundown. you DB crim. That's what they like to say is DB crim.
Yes.
Degraded being criminal. Antics of a Mama Squirrel. Good to see you. But as we know, once in the Sea Org, they don't usually go up the bridge. No, they don't. Not unless you're in our rehabilitation project force. No one says, someone once told me they went clear on aspirin, meaning that was their issue. Wow. See, I knew that aspirin was a bad thing in Scientology. Antics of a Mama Squirrel. Frankly, Dave is doing an excellent job. Oh, thank you. Thanks. Renoir 360, good to see you. This stuff is so odd to me that I really need to focus to sort of digest it. I can see why they need word clearers.
Absolutely.
He also says, do they include alcohol as a drug? as someone who's never done the purification rundown but has stayed in Holiday Inn Express, I know you're not allowed to drink alcohol 24 hours prior to training or auditing or any other Scientology process. But I don't think they lop alcohol in as the same thing as like marijuana or LSD or psychiatrics or aspirin.
Yeah.
Hubbard drank.
Yep.
So
Now, that I think that there are plenty of people that do drink, that social drinking is acceptable. You know, I think that we've heard that from some of the seconds and formers. That one of the interactions I had a month ago or so, right, the woman that said, I've been in for 7 years and nobody here drinks was her statement and nobody here does drugs. At which point everybody's out in back alley doing,
Right.
their nicotine regimen. On that process. So it's like, I can't really believe you that much.
Well, nicotine is not a drug to Scientologists. Nicotine is a anti-radiation therapy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Paul Norton says, drugs and beer save me from them. Yeah. And we hear a lot of people that say that they were being recruited into the Sea Org. They said they decided to say that they took LSD and that was their protection from joining the Sea Org. Scooter Mom, Toronto Scientology Audit says only OT2 and 3, Dave. Not sure what your question was, Scooter Mom, but thank you for the comment. Professor Kakan, good to see you. Las Palmas is where Lafayette crashed his motorcycle and decided he was PTS to Spain, which had forbade him from returning. He then went incognito to Queens, New York for about half a year and recovered. Thank you. Always a pleasure to see you in the chat and in the comments, Kakan. Do so appreciate it. Patrick Skinner, alcohol is allowed if you're not on the auditing lines. My understanding, Patrick, is you can't be on training lines either. Can't be on any Scientology process of any. But maybe I'm wrong. All right, let's look at the rest of the chat here. Did you have anything you wanted to say? What was the reason that she called you a criminal? Did you?
I really think it was that she wanted, just the idea that she wanted to relay to the recruit that I was, it's when you try to undermine somebody's authority or undermine their character so that nobody would believe them.
Gotcha.
Right? Because they were really defending that. Remember, there's 3 people outside the org. There's 2 staff members, Jessica, the black female, and this green recruit that are there. And I keep on, this guy is very interested in listening and talking to me. And, they're frustrated by what's going on. And they want to figure out, how do I cut this guy off at the knees?
I got you.
I'm sure that's where that came
Did they actually get him in?
No. So he and I walked. So listen, I would say that the guy wasn't the most credible guy in the universe. Anyhow, he told me that they went to, that he got the flyer at a restaurant a couple of days earlier. Mm-hmm. So I walked with him to that restaurant and I went in and talked to the manager and said, hey, if you ever see this in here again, here's what they represent. Please don't ever let him come in again. And, I had a very good interaction with that manager and he said something very positive to his counter staff saying, hey, that guy's right out there. Right.
Yeah, I remember you doing the live where you saw those pamphlets in that restaurant. Yeah. Scooter Mom says, you said OT2 and 3. Yeah. I mean, it's all weird. Yeah. Good clarification. Thank you. So many, y'all were an awesome chat tonight. I have so much in here. I don't know that I can find them all. Suppressive Sherry says, sitting in the living room near Dave's desk, I am struggling to contain my laughter. Yeah, she's just on the other side of the I'm in the dining room and she's in the living room. So
we get to watch her giggle all the time because she's silhouetted on screen.
Yeah, Pixel is here. He's just sleeping on the couch, probably next to Sherry. Or maybe not. Let's see. My BTs, Scooter Mom says, my BTs have mocked up my sinuses for the first time in years. Yep. Suppressive Sherry says, no Pixels in the basement. Oh, he was in the basement. Oh, he was spotting space down there.
Nice.
Oh, rest in peace, Doug Kramer. Oh, now what?
Yes.
Good to see you here. Hope everything's going well. All of this makes me think about Doug Kramer. It literally drove him temporarily insane, and it took some time for him to recover. Yes, I remember. I remember all that. It was just such a loss there. Renoir 360 says, thinking of my earlier comparison to Catholicism, I guess there were exorcisms of demons, but I really only knew that from the movies. One thing I will say, the thing that I was reading is written by Anonymous, so he may be using the word demons to mean something else. Just know that in Dianetics, there is the concept of a demon circuit. So Hubbard does use the word demon. If we look at the dictionary, let me throw the dictionary up here real quick. He does define demon, and it's called a bypass circuit in the mind, called demon because it was long so interpreted, probably an electronic mechanism. A bona fide demon is one who gives thoughts, voice, or echoes the spoken word interiorly, or who gives all sorts of complicated advice like a real live voice exteriorly. So yeah, Hubbard does use that word. Professor Kakan says, keep hearing multiple people over the years going out of their minds while doing OT levels. Yep. Auditing Scientology, he says, I think the elderly generation will only leave Scientology when it comes time to drop the body. And
I think that's true unless there is truly a loving family member, a Mike Brown in your family tree, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's Paralyzed to Paralyzed says, the longer I was in, the less of the outside world seemed worth being part of. Mind control is real. Gosh, Paralyzed to Paralyzed. Can only imagine.
It was a conversation that I had several times today, right? The idea that mind control is one of the elements of this, and a repetitive mind element that, that the people that I'm protesting against, I really do believe that they're believers, that they've been told this story enough. And I think my analogy was, if I told you I was 10 feet tall long enough or enough times, you would eventually believe I'm 10 feet tall, right?
Absolutely. I heard you say that. I mean, that's how political campaigns are run. That's how propaganda is run. That's how North Korea operates. That's how Scientology operates. That's how cults operate. That's how, so yeah, I mean, the human mind can only take so much stress and strain, and we eventually will cave to believe whatever we can, sometimes just to escape whatever strain or stress that we're dealing with.
Yep.
No one says 1 week wait for painkillers. Wow. Patrick says we had champagne and beer or wine at Sea Org parties. Yeah, I don't think they consider alcohol to be a drug.
Yeah.
But they do know that it impairs you, and they don't want you being Paralyzed to Paralyzed says nicotine is a precursor to NAD+. What is NAD+?
Non-steroidal. What's NSAID?
That's non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. That's like a leave. I'm not sure what NAD+ is. What is NAD+?
I'll use the rectangle of knowledge, but he's got another question there too.
Oh, it's nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide. So it's a cellular metabolism and co-substrate for enzymes that play a key roles in pathways that modify aging. Wow, Paralyzed, you got me. You got us. You were dropping the science.
You can order that on Amazon.
They also say they call all protesters criminals. It's taught in the PTS-SP course. And I've got that. I've got those course books right back there. So we're going to go over those one day.
And that was the one where I've always heard everybody say that they're telling everybody in there that we're criminals. I'm like, all right, yeah, are they really telling you that? And then when I heard it today, it's like, all right, I think they're really telling them that.
Yeah, I mean, it's well, it's just propaganda. It's just
I did challenge, right, the idea that when she says that to me, it's like, well, but yet I can actually list crimes that you and your crew have committed. One thing I wish I would have been able to say in real time is name one crime that I've committed. Right.
Right. Exactly. I mean, but see, they don't think that the crimes that you mentioned that they've done are crimes,
Right.
because they've been trained to believe that that is just normal, that that's just the way it should be, right? And I would argue that Jess has probably not even been exposed to any of that. Most of the people
Agreed.
in that org aren't aware of any of this stuff. And frankly, the longer and further away we get from the McPherson stuff, the more we get away from the hole up in the international base, the more we get away from people knowing about. Dave Miscavige is preying on the fact that our minds forget, and our minds in the new generations that are coming in don't know who Shelley Miscavige is, don't know who Heber Jench is, don't know who Mike Render and Marty Rathbun and Nora Ames and Aaron Smith Levin. And, so we have to just keep, which I'm glad that's why you hand out the card and you talk about Lisa McPherson, because we can't ever let people like her story get lost. So, all right. Well, folks, thank you all for being here today. This evening. Thank you, Wendy, for always being here. We're going to be in a little bit further down the road. We'll do 6 and 7 and 8. We'll finish up this series, and
Wait,
please
we're
leave
going
a
for boat
comment.
ride. We have to go for a boat ride for 8, don't we?
We do. I have to think about that one. I have to change up the background or something. We'll have to be on the Free Winds or something. We'll have to be. Actually, I want to be on the Love Boat. The Love Boat's actually bigger than the Free Winds. Did you know that?
I would have, you know what? I always expected that it was I never expected the Scientology boats to be big like the cruise ships, but.
Well, if you can actually find a size comparison, because the Love Boat is actually not that much bigger, but it is actually the actual real boat that they used to film on. And for those of you out there that might not be old enough, the Love Boat was a comedy, romantic comedy type thing of the 80s. But it's bigger than it's well, we're not going to get into comparing sizes. I'm going to be nice, but all right, looks like we're going to be raiding Club Brain Fog. Stop over there, let her know that we're coming from us. Thank you, everybody.
Yep,
for
declare David
coming.
Wendy.
Remember that Wendy's got replay, I've got replay. Leave chats, leave comments. Wendy's got an email, I got an email. Wendy's got memberships, I've got memberships. And Wendy's going to be out there more often and checking out the org out there in Chicago. And I'll be back with you later this week, hopefully, with another episode. And thank you again for my mods for being here. Thank you, Suppressive Sherry, for being here, just to show you that she is actually here. There she is. There's the computer. You can see my hand. Let's see if I can I show my hand? There's my hand.
Yes,
Hi.
I see it.
There's Pixel. There's Pixel Cam. There is, let me solo that. There's the Pixel Cam. So, all right, y'all. Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Wendy. And we'll be out
My
of here
pleasure.
with
Thank you.
Here is the outro.
E-meter. Dianetics.
Case looks good, real good.
Body thetans.
10,000 body thetans.
Okay, folks, I think he's ready for OT3.
You're not a Scientologist.
No. But I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night.